Good morning, everybody. How are you? Yeah? Yes, that's what I want to hear. You guys, I am so pumped right now for this talk. I'm like, hopefully I will infuse you guys with a lot of energy to, start giving yourself some good, positive messages so you can go out into the world and create amazing things and change the world for the better. So we're going to talk about, like he said, banishing your inner critic. I know he talked about Impostor Syndrome last year. I'm going to talk a little bit about that, but I'm going to take it even further, and I give you guys some great tools, some great mental reframes, and so you can walk out of here with something that you can actually put to use immediately. So we're here. My social handles on Twitter and Instagram is Denise Jacobs, super easy. And then on Facebook, it's denisejacobs.com. And then you guys know the hashtag NTPCon. I was like, I knew I was going to mess that one up. And By Inner Critic is a hashtag for the presentation. So let's just get right into it and talk about what blocks us, okay? Because that is what really happens. We come to conferences like this, and everybody's talking about the successes, the success stories, the best practices, what we did to make it work, and how it's all wonderful and great. But nobody, or very few people, talk about the challenges, the stumbling blocks, like where you actually run against a wall. And so we're going to talk about that. Let's do some real talk here today. We're going to talk about those struggles. And I want to talk about what blocks us from doing our best work, right? Like, you think it's probably something outside of you, like it's a crazy CEO or it's a recalcitrant CTO who won't get on board with what you want to do, right? The authority with responsibility but no authority and no power. Right? It's maybe hostile engineers, or maybe it's surly developers, or maybe it's UX designers who are kind of just dialing it in and kind of doing stuff, but not really realizing your vision. That sort of things. But what if our biggest blocks aren't external? I mean, what if, imagine, right? The biggest blocks aren't outside of ourselves, they're in here. I mean, think about it. If you spend a lot of time thinking thoughts like, what am I doing this role for? I'm at the mercy of stakeholders. I don't want to make any mistakes. I want it to be perfect. They'll find out, I don't know what the heck I'm doing. Or wondering, do I have what it takes? Or even worse, maybe you're not thinking these thoughts in I form. Maybe you've got some little voice in your head saying, you're no good, you're not good enough, you're a loser, you suck, right? Our blocks are not external. Our blocks are internal. And this voice or these voices or these thoughts, what they do is it's like an entity that like hogs our mental bandwidth, that hijacks our decision making. This voice is a pernicious force, and it's known as the inner critic. And it stands in the way of us fully accessing our genius and our brilliance and letting it out into the world. Now, the inner critic shows up differently for different people. Right? For some people, it's like this little tiny voice over your shoulder, yapping at you, right? For some people, it's like this really loud voice that takes over all your consciousness. You know, like you just can't hear anything other than the fact that, like, why can't you do this better? And then for some people, it's a judging committee. Right? It's like multiple voices weighing in and like giving input on every perceived misstep and mistake that you make. And maybe for you, other folks, it's not any of those things. It's just this kind of constant recurring voice of negativity that shows up invariably when you want to do your best work and you want to do your most impressive work. Now, when you have something like that, yapping in your ear, over your shoulder, a big judgy committee, this kind of constant self-doubt, how can we show up in our power when we have something like that? How can you develop your ideas on what a product could and should be when you feel like an imposter and you're plagued by self-doubt? And how can you evangelize your vision throughout a company if you're not really sure of yourself? How can you get other people on board with you? And then how can your passion for what you do and what you want to create, how can that actually shine through? The answer simply is that it really can't, right? And so I want you to imagine for a moment, just imagine, you can even close your eyes and you can just imagine, what would you do and what would you be able to accomplish without that nagging voice of self-doubt? I mean, what would you be able to create? What ideas would you be able to pull forth if you didn't doubt yourself and you were always in this state of feeling confident and empowered and clear? And then imagine for a moment then how amazing your team members would be if they were coming from that place. I mean, what kind of ideas would they come forth? What kind of synergy would happen? What kind of collaboration and communication would take place if the people on your team felt confident like that, right? She's shaking her head. She's like, yeah, girl, that sounds good. And then imagine if your whole company was in this place. No backstabbing, no crazy CEO, no crazy CTO, right? Everybody coming from this place of feeling confident, sure about themselves, not having those negative self-doubts. And imagine how much everyone would shine, and then imagine what kind of products you would be able to put out into the world and how that would positively affect the people who use them. Amazing, right? But the inner critic gets in the way of all of that, kind of puts a kibosh on all of that. It's the entity that keeps us from accessing our ideas, our brilliance, and putting it out into the world. And so what I want to do for the next however much time is to take a closer look at the inner critic, why we have it, where it comes from, and then to go into how to actually manage and transform the inner critic and actually even rewire our brains so that we're actually producing fewer negative and self-doubt-ridden thoughts and more positive ones. And so with that, we'll give you tools. I'll give you tools so that you can transform your self-talk, elevate your performance, and amplify your impact. So you guys ready? You're ready? Yes, you're ready. I'm ready. So let's do this. So let's meet the inner critic, okay? You're like, some of you are probably like, I am so familiar with my inner critic. We have coffee in the morning. Brings me breakfast in bed. It's all good. But let's get in there a little bit more. Now, Martin was talking about this earlier, about how being a product manager is so difficult because you're caught in the middle of having to have all of this knowledge. Yes, she's like, yes. Girl, I want to just come down and give you a hug. Later, we'll talk later. It's hard, right? You're between UX, you're between tech, you're between business. And then you've got to have this broad knowledge base. You have to be an expert on a lot of things, and yet you're dealing with people who are actual, de facto domain experts, right? You're always having to ask for permission for things. You're always having to ask for stuff. You have a lot of influence, but very little authority. And you're in this creative role where you're having to communicate and collaborate, and people are complex. Right? Like, you think that collaboration would be straightforward, but it isn't always. And then you go in and you have to untangle and deal with all kinds of psychological stuff, their inner critic, before you can actually move forward and get anything done. Complicated. And so, not surprising that imposter syndrome runs rampant for product managers and other creatives, right? Like, I speak at Adobe Max very frequently and talk to designers and things like that, and they're always like, oh my God, I have so much imposter syndrome. As a matter of fact, those little section titles where they have things written on pieces of paper, those came from Adobe Max. Like all of those insecurities. And then the irony is that as you move up, kind of up the chain in your career, you would think that you would become better equipped to deal with your inner critic, right? You've had it for so long. You're in your 30s, you're in your 40s. You're like, I've had my inner critic for a long time. I should know how to deal with it by now. Guess what? Newsflash. Your inner critic actually gets stronger the higher up you get up in the chain. You got more responsibilities, you have more things to think about, and usually people are racked with more self-doubt, but they have fewer opportunities to deal with it and less of a way to actually expose and share your vulnerabilities. So that's why I'm here, so we can have this real talk. The other thing that is problematic about the inner critic, especially in an industry like this where you have to be cutting edge and you have to be innovative and you have to be coming up with great ideas all the time, is that the inner critic blocks great ideas. It blocks the generation of ideas. It blocks creativity. And it blocks creative flow. And for me, that's problematic as a creativity evangelist, so-called, because creativity and creative flow is when we're in our power. As a matter of fact, I want to hear it from you. I don't want to just have this be supposition like, oh, Denise said your creative flow is in power. What does it feel like when you're in a flow state? What does it feel like? I want to hear from you. Give me some words. Easy. What else? Joyful. What else? Accomplished. Confident. What else? Magic. I heard magic. What else? Inspired. Energized. Okay. What? Motivated. Now tell me, motivated, magic, inspired, energy. I'm going to put in focus just because I feel like I might have heard that. Do those not sound like empowered? I even heard empowered. Does that not sound like power? That's when we are in our power. That's when we're channeling all of our genius, all of the great ideas in our head. When we're in flow, the inner critic is literally non-existent. They've done studies where they put people in MRI machines and they're doing improvisational jazz and hip hop. There's a part of the brain called the prefrontal cortex that actually powers down and becomes quiet, the part of the brain that's in charge of self-judgment and behavior modification and self-evaluation. That part gets quiet, and then that's when people are able to come up with ideas, let all those ideas out and flow. The inner critic is gone when we're in flow. So let's try to get in flow more often. So you may be thinking, so I'm so excited, I'm like shouting, everything. I'm like tiring myself out already. 26 minutes left, and I'm all, When we have the inner critic, you're probably thinking, okay, great, I got it, don't want it, where the heck does it come from? The inner critic comes from the fears that we have about ourselves that are kind of combined with the negative things that we've heard from other people, right? And this happens, you can see this clearly when you're a kid or if you have children, you know how susceptible your children are to any kind of criticism. They take that and they're like, oh my God, mommy hates me. Daddy thinks I'm a horrible person. No, I just want you to pick up your clothes and put your toys in the toy box. That's all I want you to do. That's it, right? But all of a sudden, that gets translated into this thing of like, I'm a horrible person. I'm slovenly and not worth anything. And that's what happens. That's how the inner critic gets started. And then all of that information goes into a part of our brains that actually drives subconscious behavior. And it actually affects us so that it puts us on autopilot. And then we think, I'm not a robot. And it's like, well, wait a minute, am I? maybe I am, right? So the inner critic is operating in the background, and it's kind of like driving this behavior, and it's doing it because it's trying to keep us safe. It's this well-intentioned but misguided puppeteer, right? And so it's it's overzealous. So what I want to do is I want to get you guys in touch with your own inner critical voice. Now there should be some papers somewhere little half sheets of paper. You should have 2 of them. Are they underneath the seats? Do you have a sausage underneath there? You get an apple sausage, and you get an apple sausage. Or a piece of paper. It's like Oprah. So take your little half piece of paper. You've got 2 of them. We're going to do 2 exercises, so don't use both of them, please. This is what I would like you to do. You ready? You got your half piece of paper? This is what I want you to do. Either you can use one of these wonderful Inner Critic Mad Libs that will help you get in touch with your inner critical voices. You can use, if I come up with a bad idea, then people will think I'm awful, or I'm not smart enough, or whatever it is, to fill in the blanks. If you're like, girl, again, breakfast in bed, we're very intimate. If you know your inner critical voices already, then what I want you to do is I want you to write down on the piece of paper, 1, your top fear around being a product manager, about doing the work that you do. Write down on your piece of paper, and this is everybody, all of y'all, error 1. Write down your top fear around doing the work that you do. Being a product manager, if you're not a product manager, whatever it is that you're doing. Write it down on your piece of paper. Do not sign your name. Don't put your Twitter handle. Don't put your address or your email address. Just write down that one thing. This requires everybody to do this to be effective, by the way. This is a team effort, y'all. So if everybody's like, I'm not going to do this exercise, guess what? You like messing it up for everybody. So write it down. Once you've written it down, take your piece of paper, crumble it up in a ball. And I want to see, I never can figure out a way to say this right. Hold your balls in the air. Okay. Put your fist in the air. Power to the product managers, people. And then, once you've got your fist in the air, I want you to stand up. Stand up strong. Yes, my brother. What word? Okay, now, the people in the front, I want you to turn towards the back. The people on the sides, you guys are going to have to, up here, you're going to have to, work yourselves out. Maybe you can throw that, because we're going to have a snowball fight, you guys. On the count of 3. And these pieces of paper are small, so you're going to have to really, lean into it. Put your chest into it. You guys ready? On the count of 3. This is why everybody needs to do it. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Yes! Beautiful. Pick up a piece of paper. Hopefully the people on the balcony got a little love. If you see a lot of papers, throw some up to the balcony and help your friends out. Now, I just want to accentuate and underline that we need to be responsible adults and make sure we pick up all the papers, because we don't have cleaning people here. Everybody get a snowball. I want to hear what people have written down. So please share. And you can just shout it out. If you can shout it out, what you got? Not intelligent. What else? What? Not vocal enough. Not intelligent. What else? Incompetent. Incompetent. What else? Too young. What else? Failure. Not blank one. Trying to be a team effort. One more, I heard something. Not organized enough. So everybody, except for the people who got blank papers, I wish I could hunt you down, but I can't. It's anonymous. But you can see that you're not alone. You are not alone. Everybody's got something that's going on, and it's back there. It's there. It's operating in the background. So don't despair, okay? We have mental power tools that we can use to get past this. So let's talk about how we're going to create a whole new mind frame. I'm going to run through this quickly so we can get to like some of the meat. More of the meat. We have mental power tools. We have things that we are built with, we come out of the box with, we are born with, that are capacities of our brains that will help to counter the inner critic. And that is neuroplasticity, mindfulness, and self-compassion. So neuroplasticity is our brain's ability to change and adapt in the face of new stimulus. In other words, it's learning. And neuroplasticity is really guided, and it's really about what we're thinking about. Neuroplasticity is guided, and our brains are shaped by what we put our attention on and what we think about. So if you think about thoughts like this, if you have a place in the woods that you normally walk, and you have a path that you walk down all the time, and every day you're walking down this path, what's going to happen with this path? It's going to be worn down. It's going to be really well worn, deeply grooved. What if one day you were like, you know what? Tired of walking down this path, want to do something different. Here's this whole new open field. I'm going to start walking this way. And you start walking this way regularly. You're not walking down that path anymore. What happens to this path? You establish a new path. The exact same thing happens in our brains. And it's directed and it's guided by attention and focus. It's all about what we put our focus on and what we put our attention on. As a matter of fact, attention and focus have been called the gateway to neuroplasticity because they're so central and key to the whole process of changing our brains. The other part of this is mindfulness. So with mindfulness, we have this ability to actually kind of step outside of ourselves and step outside of our thoughts and look at them objectively. So this is what else I want you guys to do, to actually practice attention and focus and mindfulness together. Put your hands up, both of your hands up, like this. And I want you to put all of your focus on one hand. It could be your left hand, it could be your right hand, I don't care. Put all your focus on one hand, and I want you to really, really look at that hand. Look at all of the details about your palm and the lines in your palm, the shape of your fingers. And then I want you to imagine at the same time that all of the negative thoughts that you don't want to be thinking are in that palm. I'm too young. I'm not organized enough. I'm not competent enough. I don't know enough. I'm not an expert. All of those things are in that one hand. Now I want you to take your attention and shift your focus slowly over to the other hand. Now in this hand, imagine that all the positive things that you'd rather be thinking. I can do this. All I need to do is learn. I can get the experience. I have a great idea. All of those are in that hand. Now, is your first hand still there? Do you care about your first hand now that you're focused on the second hand? Aha. Yes. So whenever you're finding yourself in the midst of negative thoughts, put your hands up and teach yourself how easy it can be to actually shift your focus from one to another. I'm not telling you to not think those things. I'm telling you to think something different, which is totally a different ballgame. The last part of this is self-compassion. Now, self-compassion, a lot of times people say, of course, we're in San Francisco, so you can say anything that has to do with anything new age here, and people are like, oh yeah, totally, right? But for some people, they're just like, woo, like self-compassion, that is like super soft skill, like, you know, I don't know if I'm like gonna have to go and, you know, start like diffusing essential oils in my office, which, by the way, is a great idea for attention and focus, but it's a different thing. Self-compassion actually strongly correlates with achieving mastery in your field and optimal performance. Did you know that? It also helps to help you have higher standards for yourself, helps you work harder through enhanced motivation, it helps you to take more responsibility for your actions, and it helps you have more grit. In addition, on the emotional level, like that's just performance stuff. But then from an emotional level, when you practice self-compassion, you actually produce oxytocin, the hormone, the cuddle hormone, the self-comforting hormone. When you comfort yourself with self-compassion, your body actually responds by producing that hormone. Amazing. It also helps you deal with depression and anxiety. It helps you feel more accepted, and it decreases insecurity and self-consciousness. So self-compassion is super powerful. Now, if you're like, okay, sounds great, I'm on board, I don't know how to tap into self-compassion, I'm going to give you a self-compassion template. So take another moment and imagine that a friend has come to you and is like, look, I'm having a really hard time. I feel incompetent, like I'm too young, like I can't really do my job well, people don't appreciate me, I got this authority, no responsibility, no authority, responsibility, etc. How would you help them? What would you say to them? What kind of feelings would you have towards them? How would you feel towards them? What would you do to comfort and soothe them? Take everything that you just thought of and take that and apply that to yourself. That's your self-compassion template. Whenever you have this moment where you're like, I think I need to be more compassionate to myself, just say, okay, what would I do if I were my own friend? How would I treat myself? And that's what you've got. So we've got this, we've got our trifecta, right? We've got the neuroplasticity, we've got the mindfulness, we've got the self-compassion. That's why this process works. And everything we talk about is going to have that baked in. So I'm going to go ahead and we're going to give you some tools to better deal with the emotional aspects of being a product manager so that you can remove those mental blocks and start to do your best work. 2 parts, if we can do it. Reclaim your brain and stop self-sabotage. We're going to talk about that. And we're going to talk about owning your expertise. This is to get over the imposter syndrome and how to access and unblock your creativity. Ready? Ready! By the way, you guys were awesome with the snowball fight. That was amazing. I can't wait to see the pictures for that. So let's talk about reclaiming your brain. Now, I want to share with you guys a story, a personal story, of some of the ways that I personally have had to deal with the inner critic and get over them, and some of the, success stories from it. So, I don't know if you can see where I am in this picture. How about the one in the back? The tallest one. That is me at the age of 14. At the age of 14, I was 5'11". I am now 6'1". If I stood next to Martin's 6'5", so you saw there wasn't that much of a height differential with us. I'm super tall, and I was super tall when I was in the 7th grade, and I was playing basketball, trying to get used to it. Now, here's the thing that was really interesting about it. I loved practice. I loved practice. I would go, I would do all the drills. I loved learning all of the different plays that we were going to do and all that stuff. But when it came time to the games, you guys, I was a hot mess. For real. I would put my uniform on, and my stomach would start to tighten and everything. And then I would do all the stuff. I would, do the shots, and I'd practice my foul shots, and I'd do the drills. And then we'd have the team huddle, and we'd break Bulldogs. And then I would try to find a place on the bench where I could hide. I'm not kidding. That's me on the bench, not looking at all like I want to be put in the game. Look at my legs crossed. I look like somebody pass me a hot dog and a soda. Because this is going to be a great game. Can't wait to see what the Bulldogs do. And my coach, Miss Kanine, the one with the curly hair, would lean down and she'd be like, Denise, and she'd call me up. And then I would get up to her. You guys, I would plead my case. I'd be like, Miss Kanine, please don't put me in, Miss Kanine. Please. I'm not ready. Put me in at the end of the game. No, put me in at the next game. I'm not ready, Miss Kanine. I'm not ready. Now, why do you think me, 5'11", obviously not small and wimpy, don't look like I'm going to be taking ballet, why do you think I was afraid to play in the game? Afraid of failure. What else? What do you expect? I look like LeBron James's little sister. Like, seriously, what do you expect? If you saw me, like, at your kid's basketball game, if you saw, like, a kid come out who's, like, 5'11", tall and stuff, what would you expect her to do? Dominate, be amazing. I was not that player. And my inner critical voice was like, I'm going to be a disappointment. I better just hide and not do anything. Now, here's the thing. I'm up here playing myself these tapes. Your brain is like a supercomputer, and your self-talk is the program that it's going to play. And so if you're constantly thinking thoughts like this, like I was when I was in the 7th and 8th grade and played a nary a game, then this is going to hold you back, right? You have to be aware and beware of ants. Ants stand for automatic negative thoughts, right? Ants are what happen with the inner critic. There are these negative thoughts that we have on replay. We want our brains to shut up, but they won't. And here's what I'm going to offer you, my first little tidbit. Just because you're thinking something doesn't mean it's true. What? Seriously, though. These thoughts that you have, your inner critical thoughts, they didn't even come from you. They came from other people. So here's my first little tool, or another tool for you, is to think like a scientist. You guys already have a part of you that's analytical and takes in information, assimilates stuff, and can be very, dispassionate about stuff. Be dispassionate about your thoughts. Actually take your thoughts and challenge them and try to refute them like a scientist would. Instead of saying, oh my God, I'm too young. You'd be like, am I too young? Maybe my perspective could be a valuable one, even though maybe I haven't been in the industry for a billion years, but I still have something to offer. And then you, like a scientist, you try to find evidence to either support or refute your thought. You don't just take it as gospel. Second thing that I personally, in the basketball thing, and this is probably something that you're experiencing as well, is something that I refer to as imposition mentality. In the book, The Now Habit, Neil Fiore refers to this kind of thinking of images of powerlessness and passivity. When you think, I have to do something, I should do something, I ought to do something, you're taking the power away from yourself and you're externalizing it. So here is my little power tip for you, is to make choices about the words that you're using and to really start swapping out words. Instead of saying, I have to, say, I choose to, or I get to. And anything that you're talking about, it could be something with work, it could be something personal in your personal life. If you say, I ought to, I really ought to do this, change it and say, I want to. And then this is also a great way for you to start to test what it is that you actually want to do. You know how many times you do stuff where you think, I ought to do this, and you do it, and you're just like, oh man, I could have been home watching Stranger Things, right? This will give you that template, like, do I actually want to do this? No, I don't. Well, I'm not going to do it. I should, you can change with I will and I decide, and I must, you can swap out with when can I. So these are all kind of power words. These actually help you take your power back from externalizing it and kind of put you on a better track. And then finally, one of the things that you can do, I know that a lot of times with the work that you're doing is super easy to fall into a cycle of thinking that is very doom and gloom, right? Like, oh my God, if I don't get this person on board, then the whole project's gonna be ruined and we can't move forward and it's gonna be awful, and then I spend all this time working on it, and I've got the developers online, but they're not gonna, and then woo, it's exhausting. Hasn't even happened, you don't even know. Right? This is referred to as awfulizing, when you take something and you spiral it down into the negative. And so my recommendation is to put as much energy spiraling something down, probably more, spiraling something down to the negative. Why not try to up it and spiral it up to the positive? So take whatever it is that you're thinking, and instead of saying, oh, but then this is going to happen, but then that's going to happen, say, and then. And then, when I talk to this person, it possibly could do this, and then from there, this could happen, and then from there, it could possibly do this. And instead of spiraling down, you're actually up-leveling and you're leveling up. Now, I'm happy to say that when I was in 7th and 8th grade, I did not stay mired in my whole thing of feeling imposed upon and feeling like I had to be awesome. I finally did step into the fact that I'm tall and athletic and became a really strong basketball player. So that worked. The other couple of things I want to talk to you about is owning your expertise and unblocking creativity. Now, I have this story that I was going to tell you. I'm going to give you guys like the highlights. I was in Germany. I met a friend. He had introduced me to the organizer of TEDx Rhein-Main. This was a Monday. The event was on Thursday. I said to the guy, I'd love to speak at your event. And he was like, let me see what I can do. Next thing you know, he invites me to speak at the event. I have 2 days to prepare. I send out this tweet, totally looks calm, but in the background, I'm freaking out. And I'm thinking, am I as good a speaker as can I pull this off? And what if I'm a fraud? I'm actually not good at speaking. So, when you feel like an imposter, this has got textbook imposter syndrome written all over it, right? And imposter syndrome, people can't internalize their successes. They think they got lucky. It's because I knew a guy, right? It's not because of anything that you've done. And this is what happens to us in product management a lot. And also, then we have different standards for ourselves than for other people. We have to be excellent and amazing and perfect all the time. Other people can make mistakes, but we can't, right? Imposter syndrome makes it so we don't see ourselves clearly. And this is actually really, really true very often for all the women in this room. If you have imposter syndrome, don't be surprised because it happens a lot for women, especially really successful women, and unsurprisingly, very, very rampant, like I said before, for product managers and creatives. So here's the cool thing that I want to share with you. There's a paradox inherent in imposter syndrome, and I call this the imposter syndrome paradox. So when you're feeling imposter syndrome, this is what I recommend. That you think of this. You will only experience imposter syndrome when you're competent and skilled. Like, if you need to tattoo this on your forearm, whatever you need to do. But remember this helps me all the time. Personally, whenever I'm having imposter syndrome, I go, wait a minute, this means I can do it, right? And then I move on. So remember this for imposter syndrome. Also, if you've never seen the Expert Enough Manifesto, hide the hints and go find it on the internet. It is the bomb. It'll really help you to realize that you don't have to be like this super supreme, I know everything about all of it person. You can be expert enough. And having a good amount of knowledge about something is more than sufficient. Last thing, a couple of things I want to talk about. With creativity, how many of y'all actually feel like you're creative? Yeah, okay, so it's like a super small smattering of this. You have to come up with ideas and stuff all the time, right? You have to like put together this vision and then you have to sell people on it. Like, it makes you super creative. But what happens when you have imposter syndrome and when the inner critic is super, super present for you is that you do something called committing ideacide, right? You kill your ideas before they see the light of day. Now, if you don't think you're creative, here's another great thing for you. Creativity is about recognizing patterns and seeing connections, which is what you're particularly adept at, FYI. So by definition, that means that you're creative. So what I want to encourage you to do is to kill the culture of ideacide. Now, I wanted to do an exercise. We're running out of time. So just imagine, have this. I'm going to give this to you just to do it. Whenever you're feeling like you can't come up with ideas, just take a few minutes, close your eyes, and imagine that somebody has given you a present. And then imagine yourself opening up the box and just taking out different things out of the box and just seeing what they are. They're going to be different every single time, and that is a way that you can exercise your imagination and get back in touch with your idea generation capacity. And then finally, this negative self-talk is like the biggest barrier to success. When your inner critic is really active, it means your self-talk has gone awry, and that's one of the things that we're talking about. So you need a self-talk reboot. And one of the ways to do it is to really talk to yourself like a coach would. okay? And so a coach, unless you have a horrible coach, is usually not disparaging. The coach believes in you, and it tells you what you're capable, will tell you what you're capable of doing. Professional athletes and high-achieving people often use a technique called self-distancing, where they talk to themselves in the third person. I don't know if you guys have ever heard, like LeBron James has been interviewed, and he will refer to himself as LeBron James. And you're like, oh, he's so full of himself. What he's doing, he's actually self-distancing. He's creating this distance, mental distance, to actually push himself to do more. And so remember that when you're trying to do something. If you're trying to get yourself psyched up for something, what's your name? Patrick. Patrick wouldn't say, okay, I'm going to go up there, I'm going to give this presentation, it's going to go really well. He would say, okay, Patrick, what you're going to do is you're going to go up there, you're going to talk to the CTO, you're going to put the idea forward, and it's going to be great. You've had great success in the past, and you'll have great success in the future. And that's how you would talk to yourself. And in this, I actually ended up doing this. I actually had a friend who texted me, basically the template for this, and it worked. I got up on stage at TEDx Rhine-Main. I had a day to put the presentation together, and it worked, and it was amazing. Now, let's wrap this up. I want to help you step into your power. You learned that you've got this capacity for neuroplasticity and self-compassion and mindfulness together, which will help you create a new mind frame. You've also learned that if you transform your self-talk, that will actually start to rewire your brain and put it into a different place. And then you've also learned, quickly, but still, that through banishing your inner critic, you can actually start to unlock and unblock your creativity and start trusting your ideas and putting them out into the world. And this will help you to step into your power. But the question is, what are you going to do with that? Imagine, like I said at the beginning, what you would do if you didn't have an inner critic. You have a second piece of paper. We're going to do this really quickly. You got a second piece of paper. We're not going to crumple it up in a ball. I want you to imagine what you would do if you didn't have an inner critic. What would you actually give yourself permission to do? And I just want you to take 30 seconds. First thing that comes to mind. Maybe it's write a book. Maybe it's take a trek around South America. Maybe it's start your own company. I don't know what it is. But what is the thing you would do if you didn't have that part of your brain holding yourself back? 30 seconds, because I have to get off the stage. Martin's probably cutting his eyes at me right now. Okay, now, what I also want you to do is, maybe in the next break, I want you to, you can just, it's not going to be anonymous, but meet somebody and share with them what you were going to do, and make you guys be accountability partners to each other. Exchange business cards, the person next to you, the person behind you, whatever. Exchange business cards and share, so that you've got support. You're in this room of unicorns, the community of unicorns. Use the support that's here to put this forward. That's what I want you to do. The other thing that I want you to do, maybe you don't want to do that. We've got boards outside the room where would really love it if you guys could share your snowballs and post them out there. There's push pins and everything on these blue boards. You can even organize them, right? Categorize them. I know you guys would love that. Make a Venn diagram. This is how they overlap. Paste these things on the board so everybody can see that you're not alone and that you can support each other in doing these things that you would do if you didn't have an inner critic. This is a process of continuous improvement. You don't just do a couple of these things and it's gone. But at least now, where you may have thought you would never get rid of your inner critic, you now have a toolbox to do so, right? And in my book, Banish Your Inner Critic, unsurprisingly enough, there's way more tools, 350 pages of tools. So you should totally go and check that out. Here's what I believe, and this is what I want to leave you with. The potential for greatness is in all of us. And when the inner critic is present, it's like having a bonsai and you're snipping away at all of these sprouts and shoots and buds that could produce something amazing. So do you want to do that? Or do you want to remove those blocks and become as magnificent and amazing as you possibly can be? I think you guys are ready to do that. And so I encourage you to banish your inner critic, to step into your power, and to change the world with your creations. Thank you.